I got to see this film at Sundance and I just rewatched it. Brian and Charles is a quirky comedy that's finally getting a release in theaters. But is it worth the price of admission? An endearing outlier, Brian lives alone in a Welsh valley, inventing oddball contraptions that seldom work. After finding a discarded mannequin head, Brian gets an idea. And 3 days later, with a washing machine and sundry spare parts, he's invented Charles, an artificially intelligent robot. Before long, Charles is intrigued by the wider world, or whatever lies beyond the cottage where Brian was hiding him away. And this is shot in a documentary style, and Brian narrates and speaks directly to us as the audience. Now, I had purchased tickets to watch 17 or 18 different films at Sundance, and one that I was looking forward to least was Brian and Charles. I mean, if I was going to skip any of them, this was the one that I had planned on skipping. And let me tell you, that would have been the biggest mistake. This ended up being my absolute favorite film from the festival. I mean, this movie started off as just a short film in 2017, and then got the funding to transform it into a full-length feature that we have now. So first we're introduced and then we follow Brian. He's a dude in his late 30s to maybe mid 50s. I mean, it's hard to tell his exact age, but it's not wholly important. I mean, just that he's not some super young guy. And Brian is an extreme optimist, despite numerous setbacks in his life. And he still approaches everything with awe and wonder. And this makes for some very good, wholesome comedy, despite most of it being awkward. He has this pureness to him that is so inspiring and endearing. I mean, he's socially awkward, but even through that, his genuine spirit of kindness makes you forget about his perceived social shortcomings. Now, I love the view of the world that he has. I mean, he sees beauty and potential in everything. As an inventor, Brian is always creating new gadgets. And one day, after finding some discarded junk on the side of the road, he gets an idea and then sets out to build himself a robot. A bit later, Brian introduces us to Charles, who eventually begins to speak and develop a personality all on his own. The glee and the joy that is shown on Brian's face is so addictive, and the way the writing and dialogue are scripted makes this feel so off the cuff and natural. The banter is unexpectedly witty, and I found myself chuckling out loud so many different times. And the dynamic between Brian and Charles is so fun to watch, especially as Charles quickly transitions from simple conversations into an individual with deeper thoughts and emotions. Well, I guess as close to his emotions as a robot can get, but they still come across as emotions. As Charles discovers more and more about the world, his inquisitiveness increases, and we see him very clearly begin to act like a teenager. Now he's pushing boundaries, and I really enjoyed watching how Brian addresses this and then handles it. There is some drama in there, but it's not dire or uncomfortable, but still has a massive air of truth and believability. David Earl and Chris Hayward are the writers for this, and they also play Brian and Charles respectively. I think because this was their vision, especially in how it plays out through the dialogue, it allows them to completely capture the tone of the story that they had in mind. There's a woman in the village named Hazel that Brian likes, and I love how much she matches his personality. She's quirky and a bit awkward, or at least maybe shy, so when they have conversations, it's sweet and mildly uncomfortable, but then hilarious if Charles happens to be nearby. If you're a fan of the BBC show Sherlock, you'll recognize Lou Brealey for her role as Molly Hooper. The cinematography in this is absolutely stunning. And because the landscapes are so beautiful, the camera takes full advantage of showing these to us in varying ways. Now, sometimes there are aerial shots, and other times we get to see the mountains and the hills just popping up behind our characters. And because this is shot in a documentary style, we get a lot of personal interactions. We're right there along for the ride, where the camera becomes an unspeaking character, being a part of Brian's life to experience what he experiences. This is 90 minutes and the pacing is patient, but not fast or slow. It does pick up a bit in the final act, but that's because the story places some urgency on some of the actions, making the storytelling feel a bit faster. Now, probably the only negative criticism that I could really place on this movie is the antagonist and his family. They are way over the top in terms of obnoxiousness. They're disagreeable in massive ways, and I know they're made out to be caricatures to just show absurdity to how bad and mean they actually are. But the thing is, because Brian is such a sweet and innocent guy, anything that is counter to that stands out as antagonistic and opposite. We didn't need huge villains, but that being said, the characters that make up the villainous family, they do it well. They are repulsive and you instantly hate them. They are bullies from the word go, and then the way the story handles their arc is emotional and cheerworthy. So overall, Brian and Charles is a must-see movie, especially if you want to renew any sort of faith in humanity. The cinematography is beautiful, and the documentary-style approach brings a very personal feel to the narrative. But what makes this such a standout story are the characters of Brian and Charles. We get to see genuine friendship blossom with dialogue that feels natural and real, players that are worthy of our admiration. Brian's pureness and joy are infectious and are sure to put a smile on your face as you laugh at all of the honest and endearing quirkiness. There's no sex or nudity, a little bit of profanity, and a tiny bit of violence. I give Brian and Charles 5 out of 5 couches. I mean, seriously, you don't want to miss this story. So what's a touching or sweet movie or show that you've seen recently? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.